Great to have you with us today, Kal.
Great to be here. Thanks, Rebecca.
So, in your career, you started out on a completely different path. You were studying to be a doctor, an MD, and you took a turn and decided to now run BrightInsight. Why go from the patient rounds to running a Silicon Valley startup?
Yeah. Medical school is a real privilege. You get an opportunity to really engage with people at some of their most vulnerable moments in their lives. And foundationally, it helped me really appreciate the power of science and the power of medicine. But it also really frustrated me to see that we had these amazing innovations and often how poorly they were being applied in terms of scalability, in terms of impact, in terms of personalization. And that's what's really motivated my career, which is the desire to have impact at scale. And ultimately, that's what drew me to digital technology, because I believe that digital technology has that power. We've seen it in virtually every other aspect of our lives, right? From how we bank to how we form relationships. We can do that in an amazing way through digital technology. And my motivator is how do we leverage that to have that kind of impact for healthcare?
And when you do think about leveraging that, what's the right model? How do businesses take in the biopharma space what businesses in all of these other industries have done and apply it, and in particular apply it in an environment that's very heavily regulated?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had the opportunity to lead one of the first digital health groups within big pharma medtech at Amgen. And so we built that group from scratch and had a lot of great successes, but a lot of learnings. One of the key learnings was oriented around how do you really build the infrastructure you need to enable really meaningful digital health innovation. And one of our key requirements was to be able to have this scalable infrastructure. And what we learned was we spent more time, money, and effort trying to do that than really focus on our actual innovations that we're going to run on top of our infrastructure. So I think some practical learnings for business, for biopharma and medtech is, one is to recognize that you shouldn't be in the infrastructure business. Your capabilities are around really understanding the patient, the disease, and how to really innovate to do that better. So focus your talent and your limited resources on that, and then find partners to really enable the underlying infrastructure on which you can deploy and scale your regulated digital innovations.
Given that interesting perspective that you have, working on the inside, seeing all of the time and energy that went into building the infrastructure, and now you've built that at BrightInsight, what would you say is the biggest challenge when a company works with you? What's their biggest obstacle to overcome, and what's the smartest way you've seen companies overcome that?
Yeah. So as you can imagine, there's a myriad of challenges, but in terms of the biggest one I would say is around talent and culture. Companies fundamentally come from biopharma and medtech where your product development life cycle is often measured in a decade or more. In digital, you're trying to innovate measured in weeks or months, right? So that cultural shift and bringing in talent that could really appreciate that is really critical. When we start working with them, one of the biggest impacts we have, in addition to the value of our platform, which really takes care of all of the privacy, security, quality, and regulatory requirements, is that we bring a team of folks that really understand how to innovate at the speed of agile, the speed of digital, but to do that in a highly regulated environment.
And that world that you describe can be very siloed. And clearly when you've got those silos, sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. How do you get beyond that?
Yeah. The silo question comes up at multiple layers. Where we really help our customers appreciate is that if you take the patient perspective, patients are rarely looking to one pharma or medtech company for their therapies. If you take an average diabetes patient, less than 5% of diabetes patients get all of their drugs from one pharma company. They're getting it from multiple pharma companies. So those companies need to recognize that when they build digital solutions, that they can't just build their infrastructure that's siloed to just their company. It needs to be able to talk to all of the therapies and allow the physician and the patient to coordinate across all of their therapies, which might be coming from different companies. So that part of addressing the silo from the perspective of the patient and the healthcare provider is critical. When you go within the company, similarly, you end up with traditional silos where the privacy group versus the regulatory group versus the device group versus the commercial organization, they're all trying to take a bite out of this complex problem within their own silo. And you really need to create an organization that elevates above that, that's looking at the ultimate solution and that can bring to bear the required capabilities to really innovate in digital.
Do you think that the core product offering or the most valuable product offering inside of biopharma will need to be digital in the future?
Yeah, I really do believe that. If you think about where we are today, you have literally multi-billions of dollars spent per drug innovation to come to market. And I think it's really a moral imperative then to say, well, how can we leverage digital to ensure that this amazing innovation gets to all the patients that it can serve. It gets there in a personalized way, in a way that really adapts to what that patient and their caregivers need. And that gap often is met by digital. And so I think both from a value creation perspective as well as an impact on society, we're going to see digital become core to being integrated into the therapy.
And not just super specialized in one domain.
No, I don't think so. So whether you're talking about chronic illnesses that affect a lot of people like diabetes, obesity, respiratory diseases, or you're talking about very niche, let's say oncology use cases, we're seeing today digital applications that are in development that are going to transform how that care is developed and delivered end to end across every type of disease area.
It really seems like we're at an inflection point in this moment in time as many biopharma companies are thinking about this, their boards are talking about this. What is your advice to a company that's on the verge of making a big decision in this space?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, to your point on inflection, I completely agree. I've been working in healthcare technology for a long time, and this is the most excited I've been. I really see that we are in an inflection point for a host of reasons. And my advice to board members and CEOs and other leaders would be to really think hard about what should you do internally, really invest your limited resources to build those key capabilities versus what should you really be partnering for outside experts to bring to the table, because this is a really complex problem and you can't solve that by yourself.
Thanks, Kal.
Thank you very much, Rebecca.